So I wanted to thank y'all for attending. Can any faculty and staff in the room raise your hands and make yourselves known as well? Welcome. So I wanted to point out to students as well that you're not alone in this space. You also have your own colleagues, your own mentors, friends in the space as well. So you have mentors you can go and chat with and learn more about UCSB as well as across the country as well. Right, so it looks like we're good to go then. Lovely. will be presenting today. So if I could have from our Free Beer Tomorrow documentary creation crew, Julia Applegate and Luster Singleton. You'll have the intro. I like that.
All right, we're impromptu kind of people, so.
Organic.
Organic, right? Yes, organic is popular. I'm Julie or Julia Applegate. I use both names and I use she pronouns. I'm from Columbus, Ohio, and I have been hearing about Santa Barbara and this school for over 25 years because of a drag king troupe that was based here in Santa Barbara. And so I can't tell you how thrilled I am to be here. So thank you.
And I'm Luster P. Singleton, he, they. I have had the occasion to come out to Santa Barbara also through a group of drag king performers named the Disposable Boy Toys, and in particular, a bio queen, y'all should look that up, a bio queen by the name of Summer's Eve and Kentucky Fried Woman. And, I also knew Santa Barbara because of activism that happens here. And as you will find out, we are from small Appalachian towns in Ohio, and the things that were going on in Santa Barbara, the things that were going on in this area were a real beacon of light for me growing up. So I had to get here, and it gives me great joy to be back. And I said to Julie before we even started, will you please remind me before we get started? And I still forgot. But there is something that I always like to do, and that is to set the space with some intention and to thank the indigenous peoples whose land that we are standing upon without permission. You still must know that. And to our ancestors and the people that go before us. And there is a lot of folks, there are a host of folks surrounding us right now and bringing us to this moment. And I would just like to take a little bit of time to ask you to take a breath and to let it out and to give in to the energy that's going to be. You're here because you're supposed to be here. And it's good as well.
So we're going to start by taking you back to 1971. So it's 1971 and Peter Brown is now a lesbian living in Columbus. That's Peter right there. It's kind of a little hard to see. But her birth name recedes into the background. And given her keen resemblance to Peter, screens. Move these. Sorry, I just need to move my video. Sorry about that. There we go. Okay. It's her keen resemblance to Peter Sellers, which most of you will not know who he was, but Petey looked like Peter Sellers. And so that's where she gets her name.
The original Pink Panther.
The Pink Panther, yes. So it's 2 years since the Stonewall riots took place, and Peter, looking dapper and hopeful, is new to town and soaking up the feeling of change that's in the air. Anti-war protests, the feminist movement, gay liberation, free love, and Black power pulse through the consciousness of young people across the country. Very close to the Ohio State University, nestled between a dingy North Campus apartment building and the Frosty Mug, another bar, sits Jack's A Go-Go. And a change is about to come into this space. So Free Beer Tomorrow is a documentary film project that tells the story of Jack's at Summit Station. We are a little premature. The story, the film has not been made yet, but this is what the film is going to be about. Jack's Summit Station was Ohio's longest running lesbian owned and operated bar. The film will contain interviews from a trailblazing psychologist, pioneering LGBTQ plus legal scholar, and former patrons running the gamut of tap dancers, professional athletes, feminist activists, bartenders, and drag kings. The film explores lesbian culture in an era where bars were one of the few safe havens from an oppressive and homophobic. And someone in the room here with us is also going to be in the films.
Yeah.
Lila. Lila's what brought us here. She got us here. We're the team working on the project. This is us in 90 something.
I don't know.
Maybe 94, 95.
Yeah,
Um,
that sure.
yeah, and my vest and my big bag of jeans, but
You
bag of
love
jeans are
that
bad.
vest.
I did love my vest. I love that.
That's lesbian aesthetic if I ever.
My friends used to call me mushroom head because of my haircut. Anyway, we're in Atlanta here in this picture, but we have been friends for decades and we're both patrons of this bar. Luster starting in 1977 and me in 1993. So that's what brings us to the story. We knew the important role that the bar played in the community. And we started working on obtaining a historical marker to be placed in front of the bar so that all Ohioans or anyone passing through would know what happened in that space.
There's one thing for sure that Julie and I, we meet in grad school. And we both had I would call it a lust, a thirst for our history. And we were always like, there should be a marker on this, or we should be remembering that. And we really were tired of gay men owning queer culture. We really were tired of that. We were really tired of just one image available out there for women loving women. And so we're constantly thinking about what are the ways that we can just lift it up or do it as well or better than the boys do.
So we went on this quest to get a historical marker and we got that. In Ohio, there are, and I'm sure they're here in California too, those big metal markers that are all over the place that are typically talking about, in Ohio at least, Civil War history, or this cannon went off here and that person died there and old white man did this. And we had only 2 in the state of Ohio that had any LGBTQ anything related to them.
The first, which we are both women's studies scholars and did not know this, but the first was for a lesbian in Dayton, Ohio, which is about an hour and a half, 2 hours to our west. And this woman had come out when she was 15 or 16 in the mid 1800s and was such a prolific person that they ended up giving her a historical marker in Ohio. And we didn't even know that. And the second is for the Gay People's Chronicle, which was a local gay newspaper that operated in the 80s and 90s. I think that it was. So, we're in the state, we're in the capital of the state and not a hub of GLBT, QQIA, a hub of action, and there is nothing. And we're at Ohio State and there's nothing. So we were like really surprised by that.
So we got this marker and then we celebrated. And in the process of working on the marker, we worked with our Ohio Historical Society, and they were so fantastic with us. They connected us with grants to pay for the marker. They encouraged us to record interviews with some of the people who had been to the bar so that the marker could be interpreted, right? So if you're standing there looking at it, you can also go online and learn more than just what you read on the marker. So in the process of doing that, we realized a film needed to be made. But before we got to that, we needed to celebrate and get this marker in the ground. So Mallory, who's here with us now, helped us make this recap video from the dedication event that we'd like to show you, if that's okay. And Mark, are those blinds? Can we close those?
Absolutely,
Is that a good idea for people? Would you feel okay about that? At least maybe the ones in the back?
Oh, there.
Logan's off Broadway, Jack's a Go-Go, Summit Station, Jack's, whatever you called it, you changed us.
There are over 1,700 markers around the state, each telling a little piece of Ohio's history. And your marker now joins that, the Summit Station marker, and telling the story of Ohio and Ohioans. This is Ohio history, this is American history, this is all of our history.
Who would have ever thought something like this would even be possible? Not me. In 71, we worried about losing jobs, getting beat up, and finding cute girls.
The first time I went in, I went in the door, and as soon as you open the door, everybody turns and looks at you, and I left. You couldn't be out in public, wasn't out with my family. Eventually, I started coming more and more. It just felt like home.
You knew it was going to be good when you walked in the door. You anticipated that you were going to see a lot of friends, people you know from the community.
Jack's was really kind of like our Cheers. I walked into the space just to sort of feel the vibe after all these years. It was probably the first time I walked out of Jack's not having had a drink, or maybe quite a few drinks.
I had my first drink here. Well, my first legal drink. Person at the door is like, I need to see your ID, and I'm so excited. I mean, this thing is still warm from getting made, right? And then she goes, oh no, not really. You've been in here so many times. I don't need your ID. And I was like, I never thought I was part of history. I think coming here really does remind me of the road LGBTQ people have traveled.
I went to Summit Station all the time, and when Summit Station closed, I felt a loss. I was witnessing a dismantling of those solid queer spaces. If we don't tell our stories, they can be forgotten. And so I'm glad that there's such community coming together to bring these stories and document.
I knew the history of the club when I came in somewhat, but I didn't realize it would amount to what happened today. This is just amazing.
The hardest thing is the people that were not here to see it, like my own partner of 25 years.
When an old person dies, a library burns to the ground because all the information that person held. It's like that. We need to embrace multi-generational queerism.
People don't know their own history, and it's being lost because a lot of it isn't documented as easily as it is other straight history.
We know this marker is our collective voice. It is a public announcement that tells our stories, struggles, connections, and experiences. It identifies the location of Summit Station, and it stands as evidence that Jack's exists, and is proof that we too exist, then and now.
We're looking at it.
So that's Petey now, and Petey's not very tech savvy, otherwise I think she would have joined us today on the Zoom, but we'll report back to her. This is Petey and Lee. They're longtime friends. Lee was a bartender at another gay bar in town, and really encouraged Petey to take the leap and buy Summit Station when it came for sale in 1980. Peter had been a bartender there beforehand. Yeah.
We can do that. I think that's fine.
We're kind of feeling like slides just isn't feeling right now. So these are some pictures that we took from interviewing folks along the way. And we have picture of Petey when Petey was a musician and was classically trained pianist. Got that part-time job at Jack's, and the purpose of that was to support her aspiring music career. And then she ends up buying the bar 9 years later.
Those are elephant bells, by the way, in case any of you fashionistas want to call elephant bell bottoms.
Talk about Chi-Chi.
This is Chi-Chi Walker. She is my cousin. And what was so hysterical, we live in the same town. Chi-Chi actually started, there was the National Women's Football League, and the Columbus had a team called the Pacesetters. Chi-Chi actually started playing for the Pacesetters almost 2-3 years before I did, but I had no idea that she was playing on this team until I went to hear about, I saw it on the news. I saw it on the local news and it was like, women out there, you might think these are men, but they hit like men, but they're women, you know? And of course, my ear perked up, went out there, and here was my cousin. What is so great about her story is that she had actually approached our high school football team, and it would have been 76, to see if she could join the team and play football. That is how big her desire was. And the coach laughed her out. And from the rest of her time in school, it was what people used to tease her about and bully her around, was playing football. And then we got this opportunity. And the way that she finds that out is Zanesville is 55 miles due east from Columbus. And she would drive, her and her friends would drive the hour at least every Thursday to come up to Summit to play, and someone there saw her, and the rest, we say, is history.
So Chi-Chi's one of the people you'll meet in the film when it's all done. Phil, another person that is fantastic. This is a picture of her in her, I don't know, early 20s. She identifies as a butch lesbian. She goes to Jack's right after getting her driver's license printed and having it be legal for her to get into the bar. Falls in love with the first femme she finds. And she goes on to tell us later that she hooks up with a woman later that night at a place right around the corner. So many people that went to this bar lived right by the bar. So she stumbles home with her femme, has sex for the first time with a woman, and wakes up in the morning feeling like certain that she has invented this thing called lesbian sex. She's still very adamant about that.
She's still not totally convinced it wasn't her idea.
Mary Kay.
So this person was always known to me as Mark Martin. Julie and I had, I probably said it already, a drag king troupe by the name of His Kings. And out of the clear blue one day, this person, now at that time, the thing is, none of us totally know just how seasoned that Mark is. We believe that Mark was somewhere around 60, 70 when Mark came to, said he was coming to perform with His Kings. And Mark had been actually performing at one of the Queen bars for the longest time. His wife was basically the senior seamstress for all these drag queens. And Mark used to have to he was a live mannequin for her. And out of that, he loved Elvis Presley, and they made an Elvis Presley costume, and he said that he just couldn't turn back. So here was this guy that we really were not sure. And Mark used to be a former nun and educator. And he sort of came across that way when you first met him, at least a priest, you know? And when he got on stage, it was magical. And I think he'd still be performing today if he could.
We used to say he had one move, so I'll do it for you. What was that? Because his costumes
You
were.
can step forward, because his costumes would be so heavy. And he was not a really muscular person, you know? I mean, he did sort of look his age. If there's a look to an age, you know, we would be able to say that, and that was. But the costume was so dynamic, you didn't care if he moved, did any of it.
Oh, God love him. And so he became the first Mr. Gay Ohio in 1998 well, we don't know exactly what age he was. He still won't tell us his age. So his interview is, oh my God, I don't know if we've ever laughed so hard on that interview when he told us the story about going to, in Columbus, there used to be a place where you could rent videos. You know, before DVDs and all that stuff and streaming. And the video store in the front, you'd pick out your movies that you wanted to watch. But in the back, if you went through this like door to the back, it was a sex toy
It was the
store.
adult.
And porn, yeah, porn. You could rent porn and buy sex toys. And he went back there to get his first dildo. And he tells us the story of like how that shopping experience went as a woman. He was living his everyday life as MK Rainey, not as Mark. So we've got, this is a picture from yesterday with Lila and Verda. We had a lovely time with them in their home, hearing their stories as we've been working on this project. Most of the people we've interviewed are in Columbus, but we heard over and over again, Lila and Verda, Lila and Verda, Lila and Verda from multiple different people. And so we just had to reach out and come interview them.
And that's been one of the greatest gifts of doing this project, is getting to actually go and meet our four mothers, our four people, our four queers, whatever you want to call it, you know. I'm gonna coin that, four queers.
You heard
You heard it here, folks. Santa Barbara, it ought to get some mileage. But that has been, and to make these connections, like yesterday, we did have a chunk. We were I had this foggy memory. Okay, the 70s were very good to me. So I had this foggy memory of Verda and Lila being at Summit, but I couldn't figure out what it was for. And so then yesterday they were selling it and we got there. We got to, and it was a really important moment in Columbus because it is around, there were 3 or 4 lesbians who were arrested at our Pride event in 96, 97, something like that, for taking their tops off, for being topless. And it was a huge, huge deal. We actually end up now, I say the word, mammary glands are not sex. Did you know that? They are not sex parts now. And you can be topless in the state of Ohio without getting arrested. And that is because these lesbians decided to take their shirts off on a hot, sticky day and were arrested. And Lila and Verda leading the troops to come to Summit Station and raise money for these women. And it just keeps being full circle, full circle, full circle.
So we have a longer clip of some of the people that we've interviewed. Would you all like to see that? Okay.
And then we'll just.
And then we'll do Q&A.
Yeah.
Yeah, informal. Sorry.
I was married to a man and struggling
hear
with
that all
my
right?
sexuality. So he was a very good friend to me. He was a good person. So I talked to him about it. I told him how I was feeling. He knew that up the street there was this bar. He didn't know the name of it, but he had been at a party a few years ago that was also on that street, and he needed cigarettes, and he went out to get the cigarettes, and he ended up going in the bar to get the cigarettes. And while he was in there, he had a beer and talked to the women that were in there. So he told me, there's this bar up the street. It's a women's bar. And he said, you need to go there and maybe you'll meet some people and figure it out. He gave me a belt of his. He told me to wear the belt, tuck my shirt in. He gave me one of his wallets to put in my back pocket. He wanted me to take off my wedding ring, but I didn't do that. Before too long, it seemed like people were coming in and they were dancing. Women were dancing together on the dance floor. So I remember sitting there and going, and looking at him. I wanted to see what it looked like to see 2 women dancing together, but then I was scared to. Pretty soon it filled up even more, and then this woman came over and sat down next to me, and she said, is this your first time here? And I said, how did you know? So Jax became the launching pad for me to deal with my sexuality and from my life from there on.
The bar was Jack's A Go-Go. Before we made it gay, it was a go-go bar. I was the first bartender the night it turned gay. When I heard it was up for sale, Jack's had been there for 9 years by then. I just cringed when I heard that they were going to sell it to a lady who had some gay bars, but she didn't like the women, only the boys. I never wanted to own a bar. I never had took a business course. I was a musician. I planned on being a musician or a composer or a conductor. But I just couldn't. I can't let it be a boys' bar. That's all we had for years. There was no women's bar. You had to be careful. You had to be very careful. So Summit was like, well, station, Summit. So you can say you're going to the Summit to your parents. You can say, let's go to this station, hang out. And it just seemed to work.
I think that this is 1979. I'm 22 years old. The bar was like kind of fullish, but not crowded. There were definitely women at most of the tables. I know it was getting late. The music, was pounding, but then all of a sudden, the music went off and the lights came on. Like the lights I didn't even know they had. And it's like the magic is gone, right? The dim lights, the smoky haze, the uniformed Columbus police. And I'm scared, right? The guy who was clearly in charge, and I don't know if he was a sergeant or whatever, he had a nightstick. And he was walking around, he'd tip your drink over and spill it in your lap and knocked a beer over, and I watched it just pour into my lap. And if you got up, they grabbed you. I remember being embarrassed and like mad, just like super pissed off, just really pissed off. I was embarrassed because I was this butch lesbian that looked like she had peed herself in her studly jeans, and but I wasn't embarrassed because I had gotten caught at a gay bar. Because the thing that we were afraid of back then is that if you got arrested at a gay bar, they'd put your name in the paper. Because back then there was a section in the paper where they listed everybody that got arrested. If you got your name in the paper for getting arrested at a gay bar, that your family would find out and your job would find out. You'd probably lose your job, and if you were married, you'd get a divorce. If you had kids, you'd lose custody of your kids.
In those days, coming out to people was a big deal. You angst over it and you sweated over it, and should I tell this person, and how will it affect my time in graduate school, or how will it affect my job? Telling people was like a big, big deal. In some ways, I'm really glad that the world has changed somewhat for all of us, but on the other hand, I kind of miss the culture, the places like Jack's, and you were sort of in your own safety place.
It was a different kind of community.
Yes.
Than now. We had,
for us anyway.
We weren't integrated into the culture, so we had to make our own.
Me and Lorraine were in Summit Station, and we came in early. We're sitting at the table right by the jukebox, and I can't think of her name. She came up to us and said, "Ooh, you ought to make some heck of a football players," and gave me the card and said, "Practice starts Saturday, be there." I was like, there is no women's football team in Columbus. What are you talking about, lady? You're pulling my leg. She said, "No, there's a football team and we want you to come." I thank God for football. I'm blessed to be in the Hall of Fame. I'm blessed to have some place to go where you could relax and enjoy yourself.
I ended up DJing just because I loved music. And this was back when I had the stamina of 20 people and could DJ half the night if I wanted to and sleep 2 hours and get up and do it again the next night. My goal as a DJ every time is to take you on a journey. We're gonna start out energetic, then we're gonna go back in time, and we're gonna go in the future, and then we can slow it down a bit if you're getting tired from hopping and bopping. You had the couples who danced like traditionally, and then you had the couples who were new and hot for each other, grinding all over. DJing at Summit was meaningful because it was in a space that gave people life. It meant more to me, and it felt like I was doing my part to keep people in my community safe. That was always my concern. As a Black lesbian, will I go in a space, will it be racist too? Will I have to worry about that? And you never did when you walked into Jack's. I was so grateful for that because that was the other concern. Like, I'm already Black and I'm queer, and now I'm going into this space I've never been in before. Will it be safe for me in all the ways I need it to be? And it was.
I had a lot of trouble finding a job after 9/11. For whatever reason, I believe it's because my real name is Arabic. It was a very hostile time towards anybody with an unusual name. And it was the first time in my life I was having a hard time finding a job. There was an older woman that would come in and drink tequila first thing as soon as the bar opened. She told me she could get me a job working at a hospital doing medical records with no experience at all. Like, basically you don't know me at all and you're offering me a job. And I said yes, and that was like where I worked for the next 2 or 3 years. It's just amazing that like I was able to make that connection at the bar there. I think it's because there are a lot of people there that were from small towns, and that is what I have learned. It's a small town mentality of like taking care of your own. You have all these people who in their small towns, they were not taken care of. And some of them were run out of those small towns. They wanted to create that space. And that's kind of what happened. That is what happened. And when you're kind of community driven, when you're driven to protect the people that are in there, that means you're not driven by the money. It's what saved a lot of us, and it's what made Summit different, but you know, it probably was its downfall also.
It was just chaos for 20 years. It takes so much until you reach a point. I can't go one more day. You just can't. I couldn't go to the bar. Couldn't take care of it. I couldn't run it, and I knew it was being ran horribly, and it wasn't what I wanted to be part of. Physically, emotionally, I just couldn't do it anymore.
It's kind of like when you hear about that relative dying that like has been sick a long time. You expect it, but like you don't. You hope somehow they're gonna pull through. Somebody's gonna buy it. You just know somebody's gonna buy it. And unfortunately, that's not what happened.
It was a tremendous time to be able to just be who you wanted to be. Just had to be brave.
Everything I learned and got involved in the women's community and the gay community went from Jack's.
Once I left high school, that was the stepping stone. Okay, you can do this. You can go here. You can go there. You can do what you want to do.
It changed the LGBTQ plus community in Columbus for the better. Had there not been a Jack's, I don't think the community would be as beautiful as it is now, or as diverse. I just don't see that being possible without Jack's. I just don't.
I feel like every lesbian in the city. I worked at Summit and I did my time, you know, behind the bar, cleaning Summit. There was an agreed amount that I was getting paid. I decided, and for working the door, I decided that it worked out better for me to be paid in beer. And it did. Financially, it worked out better for me to be paid in beer.
Was it always beer you were drinking that night, or could you kind of put it in the bank and drink it on a different night?
I mean, I suppose you could. I never did. I never had beer. Wow.
Leftover beer.
That's like having free beer tomorrow.
Right. So it's really, you know, it's been a gift to be working on this. This project, this film is really, it's about building community. So there's some pictures. We've done some storytelling events where we brought in some of the subjects that some of the people that you met who were part of the film.
And I want to say a little bit about this particular event. We got invited. I don't know how at all. It's been a whirlwind, to tell you the truth. We knew that we had something, but the response has just kept us on our toes. And in all of this, you know, I have been dealing with some health issues. And so it's just been like a whirlwind. But one of the things that I wanted to say is WOSU, we did the storytelling event with WOSU. And first and foremost, for these two geeks right here to be public, great, like it, as a small child, it was something that my great grandmother would listen to, was public radio. And one of the things I would always dream about was like being on public radio, doing some historical thing like that was going to be remembered from time on end. It was such a magical moment for us. And while we knew people would come out, we were packed. We had to bring in all kinds of chairs, and to see the community supporting lesbian and women's history in that way, in a way we haven't seen in years, it was like unforgettable, you know, and we keep having these moments. We did that there. We also had a storytelling event at the Ohio Historical Center. And so that has been one of the greatest parts of this project, is that we've been able to create these new spaces for like-minded people to come together. And that's one of the biggest gifts of this project.
So up there in the top, you see Mark, Mark as Mark is now. And he's holding a picture of himself in his Don't Let the Sun Go Down on Me, Elton John costume that his partner Jean made for him, and was bedazzled and beautiful. But he gave that to us, and we donated it to, with the intention of donating it to the Ohio History Center. So they've got that now as part of their collection. And when we did this event with them in October for LGBTQ History Month, there was a display of Mark's outfits, which was really kind of, again, remembering that Ohio is like Civil War history, all this stuff. Like, and we're in the Historical Society where the biggest thing when you walk in there is a mastodon. It's like, you know, with the tusks and everything. And then right next to the mastodon is Mark Martin's costumes and memorabilia. And it's there's just something magical happening that we've been blessed to
I mean, the
bring
thought,
forward.
in Ohio, it's like a common place for middle schoolers to go to on a field trip from all over Ohio. It is fantastic to just even think about the fact that some kid is going to be walking along and see that and know that they have a place. They're not going to have to wonder. They're going to know that they have a place. I mean, right next to the Ruby Slippers, you know, because they have one of Judy Garland's pair of ruby slippers there. And there's us and Judy Garland, the Wizard of Oz. I mean, Nirvana.
So shall we move to, like, Nora, do you want to We have more slides, but I think it's done. We've done enough slides.
Mercy, can we give folks a round of applause? As we mentioned in the creation of this event, this is going to be more than just going ahead and reviewing content and seeing all the wonderful history that we've got put together here. We will also be making this interactive. We'll be flipping the script, as it were. Puns, no one puns. Okay, cool. But these last 30 minutes, we'll be going ahead and interviewing the interviewers. So thank you for joining us. Our moderator, please give a warm welcome to our graduate student assistant at the RCSGD, Nora Walcott.
Thank you, thank you. I don't know if the mics are strictly necessary, but hopefully you guys can all hear me. So first I wanted to say thank you guys so much for that amazing presentation. I think it really just hit home how impactful this kind of work and this historical preservation and this community building is. I think kind of first to set the stage, what really struck me is that this is taking place against a backdrop of the real progressive dismantling of lesbian and sapphic spaces all across the country. And so I was wondering if you guys could just comment on that a little bit and what you see as, you know, why are there no lesbian bars?
We have a knack, I'd say, for just recognizing what we need to lift up. Like we just get this idea. We really care about the community. And what's interesting is we started this because we didn't feel that visible at that time. I mean, at that time, I was identifying at least as lesbian politically. That's what I would say. I did not. I identify as a non-binary trans dude. That's what I identify as now. But it's lesbian space that gave me the room to get to this identity. But we started then because we did not see the visibility. So we go back and forth from, at least from my purview, of being sort of like surprised that we're still, that this still is a surprise to people. And sort of a surprise that with all of the work that Lila and Berta have done, when you think about the shelves, the literal shelves of books that are available around, we'll say women loving women, lesbian, queer, queer stuff, is that we still don't know about it, that we're still like feeling alone and whatnot out there. So it makes me a little bit nervous. And it also makes me realize that for me, they have recognized our power. And that is why all of the attention, we have to understand that we would not be getting this attention to dismantle us, to disappear us, if they did not fear the power that we actually collectively have. And so these kinds of projects, I think, are just timely to remind us that it is our history and has always been our collective history, that we can't believe the hype of the isolation, because despite all of that, these places still exist. Summit doesn't say out loud that it's a lesbian bar until, what'd she say, 77, when she started working there. But what you should know is it was a ladies' bar from about 1964 to 65, owned and operated by a woman who did not say out loud that she was a lesbian, but all things point to she was big old dyke. All things, and she would not be upset. It's just at that time you didn't say anything about that. And so that's what I think.
I'll say, just building off that, I think one of the reasons this project is so important is not just to tell the history, but also to hopefully for younger people or people who haven't experienced what it feels like to be in a physical space with people like you, doesn't matter what kind of people it is, but knowing that that space is for you and for you to find each other, it's a special thing. And we're living in such divided times, and what I hope is that more spaces will come into existence because we'll realize that it's okay to gather with each other. It's okay to prioritize ourselves and put us at the center and make spaces for us, whoever that us is, but in this case, the lesbian, queer women and their loved ones, to lift each other up.
Thank you so much for commenting on that. I think there were so many great points that were touched on. I think one that really sticks out to me is just the importance of really cultivating these queer spaces. So I know that this is, you know, such a long project and such a part of your guys' lives, but I wonder if you could comment on what are like just a couple central tenets of the 28-year run of Summit Station, and also what does the closing of Summit Station really mean to you?
For me, it was home. It really was. And you know, the title "Free Beer Tomorrow" comes from a sign that sat above the bar that Peavy put in 1980. And you know, we've titled the film after that, but it's really not about beer at all. I mean, the beer was the sideline. It was about being together on Monday night to do karaoke. It was about being together on Tuesday night for Dart League. It was about being together on Wednesday after your softball games, on Thursday for a fundraiser. It was just being together. And chosen family is what happened there. And all of the things that, all the magic that came to life because of being in community, it changed Columbus dramatically, and not just the lesbian community. I mean, there was a anti-violence organization that was born there, Buckeye Regional Anti-Violence Organization. One, I think it was the first one in the nation. Is that right, Allie? I think so. Allie worked there. You know, this is at the time when there weren't social services to help women who were experiencing sexual assault or violence or sexual harassment, women against rape. I mean, the list just goes on and on and on. So for me, it's about the privilege I had to live in the 1990s, benefiting from the work that happened there in the 70s. And then now in the 2024, hoping to bring that spirit back.
One of the things that was really important to Petey was to keep the bar open. So the bar was open 365 days of the year. That included Christmas. It was open, it was there because she recognized that there were folks that might not have some place to go. And so it was without fail, even during snowstorms and everything else, they would get there and have the bar be open. So it was about community. It really operated like a community center, you know, and it really operated as, if you needed a job, like Troppy was saying, if you needed a job, you went there and you talked to people, and somebody would probably end up coming and saying, I heard that you needed, et cetera, et cetera. In particular, you know, in the 90s, we have all of these work programs happening to put women in construction and in the skilled trades. And the women of Summit were taking advantage of that and becoming their own contractors and running their own electric companies, which in turn helped in the bar with keeping its upkeep, but it also gave folks jobs, which was really, really important, especially if you were trying to navigate yourself out of a situation in which you had no money, you didn't know if you had children, how you were going to provide for them. And they were actually have fundraisers to raise money for women to have divorce lawyers, for women to get down payments, get housing, all of those types of things. Healthcare. It is amazing the number of doctors and medical folks that started their own practices. In my mind, that's where you built your clientele, was through Summit. There is the Lavender Listings, which was basically a phone book of all the gay, lesbian, all the queer stuff that was happening at the time. People had the ads, it was all listed in there if you needed a dentist. And it's one of the first of its kind, I believe, in the nation. So that's what was happening out of Summit. You know, it is set in University District. So it is, I think that lends some. You know, because people are coming to college to think differently, to be pushed and pressed. And so I do think that created, lots of folks did their homework, wrote their dissertations, graded papers, more than a few people graded papers over a pitcher of beer there, and it just sparked other stuff.
That's so fantastic. And I think thinking along the lines of that kind of activism, something that also really struck me is the lens through which drag king performance really played a role in all of this. And of course, you guys have really played a major role yourselves in establishing the His Kings troupe. And I wonder if you guys wanted to take a little bit of space and comment on that.
Sure, yeah. So like Lester said, part of what was happening for us in the mid-90s was that there was a vibe kind of that, you know, you go to the dance club, you hear the same music every night. We had this big club downtown called Wall Street, and I mean, it was packed. There were no shortage of lesbians in that central Ohio region.
Especially the first Friday of the month.
Yeah, first Friday of the month.
Friday of the month. You better get there early.
They started with music from the, I don't know, 60s with Free Pizza Bar, and it progressed up through the 90s, and the crowds would switch based on who was staying up late, who wasn't. But anyway, for us, it just kind of, it was feeling like gay men, white gay men had all of this space, all of the energy, all the club nights. And what we had was 4 Non-Blondes every Saturday night, or Alanis Morissette, or who, not that these were bad bands, but
I love her. I love
I
her.
love it too, but it was just feeling like we were stuck in a rut. And because we had this relationship with Jax, we were able to talk to the bartender there and say, hey, we have this idea for a different kind of night with different music, some bands, some performances, and then they let us go.
Julie was a DJ. She always sort of downplays that, but Julie was a DJ in club music. You know, there weren't females that I knew of that were playing like club music. So she needed a platform for that. And I always had flirted with dressing up. I had always flirted with it. I never was as feminine as I was when I dressed up. On my everyday, I wasn't like that. But if I had to get dressed up, then I went for the gusto. And we were just like, well, we're just gonna create. You know, we're graduate students full of bravado. Bravada. And so we just decided we would create our own scene. She got a DJ night. We had, there's a really great documentary called The Shinjuku Boys. You should check it out. And the Shinjuku Boys were cross-dressing performers in Japan. And I won't go all the way into it, but it was that I saw this film. And Julie also had her girlfriend was from Greece, and they had been playing with male impersonation where she was from. And so it all just sort of came together. We decided we were gonna have a club night, and that the boys should be the only ones to be able to put on a show. I come from a family who does a lot of show things, bringing people together. And so we just decided to have a night, and the women loved it. And we were unapologetically sexual. We were not whispering about anything. We did not expect the dildo that came out that night and got swung around and thrown into the crowd. But we also did not expect the women's reaction who just went insane for it. And, you know, we just, what can we say? From that moment, that was in September. By January, we had a troop, we had a business, we had a t-shirt, and we just started going with it, with His Kings. And we really, it was the first performance group in gay Columbus that was multi-diverse, not just in terms of race, but class, by academic privilege, by just about everything, and gender, which was something that we weren't even quite sure. It was really folks from Santa Barbara who came and kind of pushed those conversations for us to even think about it. We were just appreciating each other, you know, and it did become a launching space for folks to really figure out their gender, figure out their sexuality, figure out that men can be pretty boys too, or lady men too. And I don't know.
You know, I love that you brought that up. And I think it's really interesting how drag king performance really celebrated this kind of sector of the LGBT community that's really evolved over the last maybe several decades, that being the transgender and gender non-conforming community. And I wonder if you have thoughts about how that kind of performance really laid the groundwork for gender non-conforming people to be expressive and to explore their gender expression.
I think it never actually really occurred to us, which I do think is odd, but it never really occurred to us to manage how people were doing their gender. And I think that that allowed it just, I'll talk about my own approach. There's Victor Victoria is for you Julie Andrew fans out there. I love you. Victor Victoria is about a performer, a female performer who goes to Gay Patty, can't find, I'm doing the addendum, can't find a job, and ends up realizing that if she has a deep voice, so she realizes that if she presents as male, she can get this job, and that's what she does. Although the promoter, and through it, the promoter is falling in love with him, falling in love with her, but can't understand it because he only knows her as him. And so Julie Andrews goes back and forth through this character, Victor Victoria. My character, Lascivious de la Version, was exactly that. Like, it gave me room, and I think for us, because I came into it as I'm like, oh no, I'm a drag king. I didn't know the rules for drag king. I'm a drag king, but my drag king is a drag queen. And because of that, and you know, I could not do Lascivious without seeing myself as Luster. I have to be Luster because Lascivious is an extension of Luster. At that time, I was going by my birth name, so you can see, but what that did was open up the room for gay kings, guys that were like, oh no, we're not gonna be macho guys, we're gonna be poofs. That's what we're going to be. And they named themselves as that, and it allowed that. And so I feel like it opened up this room. That is why we were a bit unique from everybody else. There was an explosion going on the coast. So in New York, we had the Casanova Club. They were all very macho. They were doing a very macho performance, and they were also doing something that was like dirty old man kind of thing, like skeezer. They were doing skeezer. Our Midwest sensibilities And that comes out of Germany, a lot of that skeezer drag, where you're just like the most disgusting masculine being that you could be. That skeezer drag was coming out of Germany. It did not set well with us. And so I think that's just why, because I kind of did that it opened it up for other people.
Yeah, I'll say too, I think one of the things that happened was because we were getting comfortable in our gender nonconformity and doing that publicly, that the people who also felt that need just kept coming. So, you know, for me, I was not a performer. I entered this through music, but I still got dressed up the night of the show. I still put on sideburns and had a sailor suit on or whatever. And that really gave me the space to do what I had always done at home, you know, and that what I'd done at Halloween, but, you know, to then do it and go out with my girlfriend and be around friends and feel safe doing it. And I just think there were so many people who needed and wanted that. So opening up that space for it, you know, more people just came. Oh, question.
No, I just wanted to say, what you all can't picture is that watching Luster and Lusty MC was incredible. So it's, you know, just imagine Luster doing that, and of course Julie had the music going and stuff, but yeah, it was really, you know, for me who didn't have the word trans back in the 90s, it was a really cool space to be in, so. And that's something that they can't express, but that I can, having been there and watched them.
Yeah, thank you. It was special. It sounds so fun. I wish I could have been there. I think one thing that also stuck out to me watching your presentation is how intergenerational the space was. And I wonder if you could kind of speculate on the importance of that and the importance of maybe, you know, younger Sapphic people talking to older Sapphic people and vice versa, and having those kind of spaces.
Well, I'll say, when I moved to Columbus, I was 23. I moved only because I knew there was a good lesbian community. I was there for 6 months and then gone. And then I was gonna go, you know, get my sexual orientation sorted out and then go get my life, you know, get a job and be a diplomat and everything. And I was there maybe 3-4 days, and Lester was one of the first persons I met. And we were a little bit different in terms of our age, and so Lester was older than me, and I met all these people, and they were everywhere, and needless to say, I never left. But it was because of, you know, for me as a young lesbian, at that moment, all I cared about was my sexual orientation, was just getting that sorted out. And I didn't care about a job. I didn't care about anything. I just needed to know who I was and how to be that person. And meeting people who were 10 years older than me, who were out and living their lives and had jobs, and, you know, we could play softball together. What it gave me was an idea of a future. And I treasure the fact that I got that at age 23, and I teach now at Ohio State, and I have a lot of young students because I teach queer studies, and what I hear many of them saying is, we don't know what our future is or looks like. So for me, I think the intergenerational piece is like of utmost importance. I just feel like the loss of that for younger people is an absolute tragedy.
So I'm first generation, graduating undergrad and graduate school for my family on both sides. It took me a little over 11 years to do my undergrad. So by the time I get to graduate school, and I have to be honest, I love learning and I wanted to continue at school, but I really had no idea why you went to graduate school. I really didn't. I knew that maybe you get paid a little bit more, the books are better, but I didn't have any idea. But it's because of people, and it was because of a guidance counselor or whatever, academic counselor who pointed me to women's studies. And then that same guidance counselor with other like-minded women out of the Women's Studies Department made sure that I got to graduate school. They called me and pushed me and then sent somebody to help me fill out the application and get it in on time, because it's not my strong suit. And I find myself in graduate school almost 10 years older than the people that I'm there with. Applegate is one of them. And it was a great thing for me, but it also, again, allowed us that intergenerational piece. You know, what was going on for me at that time is people my age, they're settling down, being married, doing all of this. And while I was in a relationship that did have children, there was still room for me to pursue more education, though I didn't know what I was going to do with it. And so it was just sort of like the right time. So I'm always bringing in this conversation, thinking about people with children, thinking about people with no money, and how are we going to be able to do this? You know, we came up with one of the clever ways was we ended up with a group called the King's Court. And they would help us set up things and do things. Then you got to come to the show for free. You know, those were ways we've always had that in our mind, because I also was trying to maintain a house through doing all of this. And then I got a real job with the university. And so that was able to bring in professors and instructors, which filled in the gaps for classes. And then we're teaching, so our students are gonna come. So it was just like a nurtured bed, you know, like everything converged. That's what we hear about movements, you know? Everything happened at the right time for this space to create. I had always wanted, Jax was very, very important to me. I would not be alive. I guarantee you that. I would not be alive. I'm certain of it, had I not had that place. And when these folks came along, there's several people that would not be alive. I'm not being dramatic at all. The truth of the matter is that it really, like she says, gave us life. It really, and the two of us, we just kind of clicked. I don't know why. We had the same kind of value for the community. And we center, while we center Sapphic experience, we are also open always to the other ways that people enter. I mean, I'm a trans dude talking about lesbian community and life. That's been trippy. It's trippy when I walk in the door and we're doing an interview and watching people try to figure out, what the hell is he doing here? You know, or trying to figure out when I'm talking about things that happen in the space and being like, I don't remember seeing him there, those types of things, and then trying to explain to other people why it is important. Why Sapphic space? Why women's history and women's life is crucial to what we do, you know, and I just think that it was what we already had. You came with all the poli-sci stuff, so Julie's always kept us on the pulse of what was happening politically, and then, you know, we were women's studies students, so.
I think talking about the experiences of women in these spaces, it brings to mind that when I feel like I watch queer media and consume these sorts of spheres, that often what you see is more gay men in a lot of drag queen performance. And I wonder, you know, without pitting communities against each other or anything, if you guys have thoughts on why it is that drag king performance in these more women-centered spaces tend to fall behind.
I think there's so many reasons. I mean, misogyny has got to be chief among them. You know, RuPaul really has really done a disservice to drag king performers
live actively, you know, bashing us and talking about the fact that like somehow we're not legit drag. I don't know, it's
And
just.
that there's no mystery to masculinity as there is with femininity, that somehow putting on femininity is way harder and way more of a gift and an ability than it is to put on masculinity. It's ridiculous, you know, it really is ridiculous. And I think that it comes down to the way that whenever women do something just as well or better as their counterpart, as our created binary, then it's thought of as less somehow. I do, that's all I can think about. And I also wonder, I'm also like women, we just need, that's why we do what we do. And instead of, you know, I did there for a while, really thought about going on RuPaul's drag show, really, especially at Lascivious doing what I'm doing, you know, what I'm doing. And then I just realized that it felt like a waste of energy to try and argue with my own community about my validity. And that when I look at what we've done, part of why we're doing this too is we haven't done a good job of pushing up our history. So that is also why this all happens. And that's why we run into people saying, well, there'd be no interest. But obviously there is an interest. You know, your bookshelves prove it. Right? If you go, you could go to the library under the canopy stuff and see so many lesbian flicks and films and sapphic stuff. So it is a conundrum that I cannot figure out, because how do both exist? You know, how is it possible? There is this whole cachet. So where's our theater at? I mean, one of our things that we really want to do is there needs to be a museum in, or what did I say, an archive in Columbus, Ohio. I mean, again, sorry, California, Ohio, the heart of it all. And, you know, I must say that nothing truly, really politically powerful happens without Ohio. And so in that vein, where we've got our Women's Fund, one of the first in the nation, Ohio Women's Fund, our Ohio Women's Philanthropy, all of those types of things. So it becomes upon those of you coming forward to say, we're going to take these resource monies and this is what we're going to create. It is no dream is too big. Look at it. I mean, I'm 100 years old and here I am, you know, truly I am. And here I am, like talking about this very exciting thing, you know, that, and hopefully we're going to be able to see what you are inspired to do out of it.
I'll just add one other thing too, with the drag king community we were building in Columbus, and then we launched the International Drag King Extravaganza in 1999 at Ohio State. Not necessarily with their blessing, but we did it right there on campus anyway. But our whole mission was.
Didn't even ask for permission.
We didn't, we just booked the room, something like this, right? And stole paper from the photocopier machines and all that, right? So, but we wrote down, like, what are we doing? What is it about IDKE that's different about drag queens? And for us, it was really about building community, explicitly bringing people together before, because there was a drag king explosion going on at the time, bringing people together before rivalries developed, before it became catty and competitive, and saying, you know, if you're interested in drag king stuff, it doesn't matter if you're a photographer, you're sticking dollar bills down the performer's pants, come and hang out with us for a weekend and let's do it together.
Well, thank you guys so much. I think that is coming to the end of our allotted time. I don't know if do we have time for audience questions?
That is a great question. So I want to let folks know, in case you have class or anything like that, we're aware that you're all students. We hit 1 p.m., but we have the room until 1:30. So if you would like to, I think we have time for up to 3 to 4.
We also have stickers and some things up there on the table that you can have, so if you do need to jot out.
Yeah, so if anyone has any questions, feel free to answer.
Right, I'll
You
just
can
speak
project.
loud, yeah. Thank you for this to begin with and for coming here and doing this project. I can't remember I use queer ancestors, but queer. Four queers. I'm gonna start using that now. I love that. So I think that's really important. I come from Kansas, the Midwest, for most of my life, so very similar environments. We had some queer people, but that was about it. I was lucky enough that my mom grew up in theater, theater production, so I was introduced to like queer culture that way, but she's not queer, so it was a little different. So it's projects like these that really taught me a lot of what my own queer history looks like, especially with queer identities that aren't mine. So thank you. But what advice do you have for a lot of younger generations looking to produce or find spaces like this bar? Young folks are transient now. We're moving from place to place, often by necessity for financial reasons, cultural reasons, because we just don't know what the fuck we're doing yet. So these permanent places are hard to find and even harder to make. So what advice do you have for finding that sense of, like our cheers, somewhere to come home to,
It's challenging, I think, for all those reasons that you mentioned. I think with the internet, you have a way to find each other in ways that we were just beginning to do in the mid-90s. But there's a movie we watched recently about lesbian spaces, and there's a group in there, the Trans Ladies Who Picnic or something like that, Picnicking Trans Ladies, I can't remember what they're called, but they got Trans Ladies Who Picnic. They find each other, in whatever local environment they're in, and they go have a picnic together at a park. And I thought that was a really creative, progressive, free way to gather. So I think being scrappy, being inventive, and not giving up. I mean, really, tenacity is why we were able to do what we did. And we are both hillbillies and resourceful, and so we just elbow grease, you just keep doing it, don't give up.
Scrape together pizza and show a video, and honestly, I'm not being flippant. And those are the small little ways that you can do it. You can also, we just started a thing called Lesbo Bingo. People love bingo. Like, even if you think you don't like bingo, you put it in the environment. Next thing you know, you're like really feverishly waiting to be able to get that B8 so that you can shout out Lesbo Bingo. We weren't quite sure, if people would resonate with it. It was at a local bar between 2 and 5, which is usually a time where taverns or bars would hope for somebody to come in and do something. And we just did bingo and we had a packed house. And so it's as simple as that, as doing bingo, and maybe you just have a gay 90s night and you're going to play for 2 hours all the gay queer music you can find from the 90s. Or maybe it's a 80s versus 70s sapphic music battle. And you just have people come and do that because you can afford it. My thing is to not let it grow. It will grow on its own. No, if you have one person show up, that's one more than you had before. I feel like sometimes in watching this stuff that people get out of sorts because you do it and it's not as big as like the civil rights movement, like you put together a gathering and only 12 people and you feel like that's a failure, but it's not. First of all, exponentially, you should know what the reach of 12 may have in simply mentioning it. And you think about yourselves, I know I hear about something. It might be the 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th time that thing happens that I finally get there. Because there's light, there's just plain out light, there's good intention, I get to the door and I get overwhelmed and I get scared that I'm gonna go in there and it's not gonna be what I think it's gonna be again, so I just decide not to. So you give room for all of that, but do your thing, and just see what happens. Tell people a brown bag, you bring your lunch, I'll bring mine, we'll meet under whatever that arch is, and we're just gonna sit there with no other intention than maybe we all write on a piece of paper what we'd like to talk about, and we pick that out, and this week, that's what we do. That is how we really got started doing the things that we do, is to just be like, we've even had bake sales. We've even had a bake sale. We have done a yard sale or a thrifting thing. We did it was just like, the Threads Revisited thing when we did that. That was a big, we work with a local, silk screener, and we got all of these really great thrift clothes. And we put them all in a room and invited people to come. They could bring stuff, leave stuff, whatever, and they could get the silk screen print on it. Met all kinds of people that we wouldn't have imagined, and it didn't cost us anything, really. And from that, other events happen. So that's what I would say. That's how you do it. Believe you can. You gotta believe you can, and if you're thinking it, I guarantee you, there are 20 other people that are sitting around wishing the same thing. And so, do pass the wish. Oh, it's time.
Okay. Good question.
One last question.
One last question. Again, hi, I'm Anissa. I'm currently I'm a film and writing student, and I know you guys are doing a documentary. And I know recently there's just been a lot of shelved and scrapped sapphic shows on streaming, especially just hearing you talk about, again, just seeing older representation for sapphic women on TV. That's been making me think of the League of Our Own Amazon Prime series, that even though they were greenlit for a second season, it got scrapped, and that makes me really, really sad. But again, I know you guys, it's a documentary, not necessarily entertainment industry, and I'm wondering how, especially since you have this documentary that's about, again, just the sapphic community, how you guys were able to still find funding for something that I know is really niche, and not niche, but obviously the audience is there, but the industry doesn't allow for it. And how you guys keep on going regardless of that kind of backlash, if that makes sense. Because I really want to be, again, writing these types of shows whenever I break into the industry in the next 20 years, but just how you guys kept moving forward anyways with it.
Well, we started by getting some funding from our local humanities organization, because humanities is all about storytelling.
Right.
And the truth is, in the last 10 years, there's been a lot of emphasis on diversity. And so when federal money is getting released to states, it's not uncommon, there's more requirements for diversity. And so where 15 years ago, you might not see an organization like that prioritizing lesbian stories, they are now. They're actively looking for stories from marginalized communities. So capitalizing on that, capitalizing on this network of people who were part of this bar, and they have very fond feelings, and they know the story isn't being told. And so some of them have resources, and they've opened up their wallets. And then one small grant led to a larger grant, and then the more people that get interested in what we're doing, the more people will say, well, I heard about this or try that. And so we just follow every path. That's how we got here, right? To this seat right now is by just following each of those leads. And yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I mean, after that dedication event, I was just like, how are we gonna make a movie? I was depressed, you know, even though we had this amazing event, but it was just like, now what? Poor Lester was in sick.
I didn't even get to go to it.
Yeah, it was really sad, but anyway, but then another grant came through and then it was like right back up again. So I think you have to ride the waves and search everywhere, turn over every rock.
They'll give up.
Yeah, I would just say that too. And your resources may be closer than you think. And don't be afraid to reach out to people and see what's the worst they can say is no. I mean, we have been surprised by some of our no's, honestly. And just as surprised as by some of the yeses. And so you just do that. If you get the idea, you know, you find out. And the other thing that I was gonna say in terms of how to do this, will be the last thing I say, is a lot of us, I know for Julie and I, for sure, you just need to reach out and ask. There is a sense amongst, you know, this generational gap thing goes both ways. So there is a sense amongst your elders that you aren't interested to hear the story. And a lot of elders don't realize that their story is important to you. And one of the hardest things has been trying to get people to tell their story, to think that they're important enough to tell their story. And so you feel free I mean, it's 21st century, you can find out how to get a hold of people. And you just reach out to them and say, hey, I'm so-and-so, and I'm trying to do this, and I know this might be out of the way, but what would it take? And I would also say, try to go in with an idea, instead of saying, what do you need from me? Go in and say, I'd like to do this. I've got a little bit of change. I can cover your gas or whatever. I'll give you a meal. I'll give you lunch. You won't starve while you're there. Could you come and do that? They'll tell you they can or they can't, or what else that they might need, but you'd be really surprised. Once you do that, then you go to all the offices. They might not be able to give you the whole thing, but they can give you little pieces. So you just have to be tenacious and go to this office and you go to this office and look at the angle and think about the angle. As critical thinkers, and all of this stuff intersects. So you just look and say, well, for this angle, would it be nice if you gave $150 for this? Oh, well, for this angle, you know what? I saw that you guys gave that $200 for beverages to such and such, and that's what you do. And you taxed your local queer organizations as well, because most people are sitting around being lazy, to tell you, to be quite honest. They're sitting around and being lazy. So take advantage of it, but you don't go and ask. You go and tell them what you want to do and try and have it in your mind as much, and you will be surprised. You will be very surprised at the yeses that you get.
I think that's a great place to end. Thank you so much for the excellent presentation and for all the work you guys are doing in the community. I think it's so much appreciated and
Thanks for having us. We do have stickers. We made these because lesbians get shit done, so got some stickers for that, or our film. We even have a couple of these love one another flags, so
Yeah, they're up
whoever gets
front,
here
and whether or
first.
not, take them back if people want one.
Yep, there's 3 of them, so.
You can't have the article, it's our only copy.
We have about 15 more minutes in the space, so I just want to know, because there's another group coming in. Yeah, so if you exit, just all the way forward and to your left. Okay. If folks, last call for food, because we're gonna start putting it away.
No.
Oh,
Oh, it's on screen.
Wow.
If I rewatched it, I would know about it, but I was so tired.